Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Trump. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. The seizure and shutting down of USAID is the first major victory for the Trump administration in getting control of the federal agencies. Sure, he can appoint people to his cabinet and the Senate can advise and consent, but for real change to happen in the government, he can't just control political leadership. He can't just control political appointees. He's got to control the inner workings of the federal government. Those people have always seen themselves as separate and apart, not part of the federal government, controlled by the executive branch, controlled by the president, just kind of their own professional people, and it's for them to decide collectively how they would like to run the government and spend all the taxpayers' money. Well, with Elon Musk and his team coming in and taking control of IT departments, they've been able to get control of USAID and the entire federal treasury. This means for the people that have been looting the federal government to push their own political narratives and to make themselves rich, the game is over, and there's no stopping Trump now. From the Wall Street Journal, how Trump gutted America's $40 billion aid agency in 2 weeks. And when they cite a number like $40 billion, it's important to understand that's on an annual funding basis. That's what we've been paying to support their agendas. And it's not like what USA does is all corrupt. Just about 90% of it, though, is. And in a lot of cases, in my opinion, outright theft of federal monies, of taxpayer money, has been being done behind the human shields of people who are actually sick and impoverished in foreign countries that would benefit greatly from our help and will benefit greatly from our help. USAID is going to exist as a very, very small entity under the State Department, under the control of Marco Rubio. So people will get their AIDS drugs in Africa, which they have a big program to do that. They will get financial assistance and food assistance. And I know we should be taking care of people in the United States first, but if they're able to cut a $40 billion budget down to $4 billion and the theft and the nonsense isn't going on, that's something a lot of people are comfortable with. From The Guardian, Trump dismisses USAID direct hire workers around the world. USAID agency staffers overseas, except those deemed essential, are placed on leave as diplomats' union plans legal action. These are people working overseas through USAID that the government has no real control over, not Trump's government anyway, which is why they're going on leave and they're all being recalled home, like immediately. They will be back in the United States within the next couple of days. From the Daily Signal, here's how Trump's move on USAID will impact George Soros' funding empire. George Soros, the notorious funder of left-wing causes all throughout the world, prosecutors, he does fund those things. He does have his nonprofits, but there's a tremendous amount of funding. And in a lot of cases, the majority of the funding to those causes being contributed by our tax dollars from the federal government. That's all getting cut off. George Soros is the face of it, but when it comes to actually spending cash, it's a lot of taxpayer cash that's getting wasted. And it's not just waste and theft. This is in direct opposition to what the American people have voted for and what they want and what they benefit from. And even more strangely now, leftist publications seem to be having financial problems. From Shore News, Politico faces payroll issues amid revelations of U.S. government funding. The U.S. government has been funding Politico and the New York Times. We've been sending them millions of dollars to operate their leftist publications. Not anymore. And exactly what was going on with Politico, I don't think we're ever going to know, because just a few years ago, somebody bought Politico for over $1 billion. So why are they getting handouts from the U.S. government if they were just purchased for $1 billion? Additionally, the New York Times is its own separate business. It's not some kind of volunteer operation. Why is the federal government giving these publications money, essentially just to slander the American people? All of that's now cut off, and a bunch of these publications are going to go out of business. Politico couldn't even make payroll. From the Wall Street Journal, how Trump gutted America's $40 billion aid agency in 2 weeks. Dismantling of U.S. aid, including putting all staff on leave, appears to be a test case for the new administration. It is a test case. This is not the only division of the federal government. It's not the only agency that's going to get a massive makeover with massive cutbacks. Every illegitimate part of the U.S. government is going to be removed. The government will be restructured. Essential services will always continue. But the waste, the theft, the people who are acting against the American people, they're not going to be part of the system anymore. From Washington, the cuts came so fast that one dismissed employee had to be rehired to process other employees' timesheets. Photos of projects that the U.S. Agency for International Development had funded around the world, girls playing soccer in South America, families getting food in Eastern Africa, were gone. And in their place were strips of nails and empty picture frames against the white walls. Over the course of less than 2 weeks, the Trump administration largely dismantled the work of a 10,000-person, $40 billion foreign assistance agency and the thousands of people in nonprofits and other groups that work with it. They don't just work with it. They rely on checks from USAID. The way that USAID wasted money and fought against common sense for the American people is vast. Take a look at this post from Patriots.win. Remember when Conan O'Brien went to Haiti and made fun of Trump, calling it an S-hole? This guy was paid by USAID to work with celebrities to push a campaign saying that Haiti was a great and a safe place to visit. From Jeremy Kaufman, just got word that I've been let go after USAID was defunded. My NGO, that's a non-governmental organization, like a nonprofit, was responsible for coordinating the celebrity response to any America First cultural movement. These cuts are ruining lives. So anytime there was an America First concept that was in the culture, there was an NGO that was taking money to work with celebrities to push back on the American people's agenda. I think the country will do just fine without funding nonsensical projects like this. By Monday, USAID had closed the agency's main building and pulled down its website. On Tuesday, all of USAID's Washington facilities were closed as the agency prepared to put nearly all of its remaining 1,400 staffers on administrative leave, according to 2 officials. And why on administrative leave? Why not just fire all these people? Well, because there are all kinds of protections for federal workers, so yeah, they'll eventually all get fired. But in the meantime, you can stop them from doing whatever the heck it was that they were doing, none of which you actually want them doing, by just putting them on leave and letting them stay home. Which, of course, a lot of these people are working from home anyway, so they're home. They just don't have access to their computers to spend our money and do things we don't want them to do. The big announcement came later that night. Nearly all USAID staff would be put on paid administrative leave starting Saturday morning, with aides working around the world ordered to come home within 30 days, barring special circumstances. The announcement was placed on USAID's website, which for days had been offline. Quote, "Thank you for your service," was listed at the end of the message. USAID appears to be a test case for whether the Trump administration can effectively restructure a decades-old agency without meeting much legal or political resistance. So far, the answer seems to be yes. Some outside groups are saying they can't get paid for work they've already done. The few officials who remain are forwarding past due invoices, trying to walk a line between potentially violating a directive from President Trump and violating federal contracting rules. Stephanie Plant, a 40-year-old contractor for USAID's Global Health Program, was fired via email, with her health insurance severed 3 days later. Quote, "That's when the incredulity began setting in," she said. "And I'm not for having people's health insurance be canceled. It's unfortunate if that happens. But when you work for the federal government and you're undermining the federal government, or you're part of an organization where 90% is undermining the American people, yeah, you're going to wind up getting fired, and you shouldn't be around those people. And you will lose your health insurance." USAID was established in 1961 to fund efforts to manage disease outbreaks and reduce child mortality, among other child aid programs. It's been kept as a distinct agency from the State Department for decades, in part to avoid giving the appearance that aid was directly tied to diplomatic requests from the State Department. That goal is run headlong into Trump's America First approach and Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, which is seeking to trim billions of dollars in government spending. The Trump administration has started to fold USAID into the State Department, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio stepping in as its acting administrator. Senate Foreign Relations Chair Jim Risch said he would support merging the two. Some Democratic lawmakers who support USAID tried to enter the building on Monday but were shut out by security guards. Quote, "Is Doge there?" one of the lawmakers asked. Quote, "You cannot wave away an agency that you don't like or that you disagree with by executive order or by literally storming into the building." According to Democratic Senator Brian Schatz, the White House said in a statement Monday that for decades, USAID has been unaccountable to taxpayers as it funnels massive sums of money to the ridiculous and in many cases malicious pet projects of entrenched bureaucrats. Longtime USAID officials acknowledged that the process for delivering aid could be inefficient. It could be, huh? The Trump administration pointed to examples of U.S. dollars being spent to fund diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in Serbia and a transgender opera in Colombia, as well as a $32,000 transgender comic book in Peru, which I would love to see as a comic book guy. And no, the money did not go to me. As Doge representatives canvassed the building, some USAID staff weren't sure who was working for that operation, suspecting that some might be dressed in suits and others in puffier jackets. Some of the Trump administration's actions, such as furloughing contractors, have been broadly legal, but others appear to be impinging on Congress's authority, according to Matthew Kavanaugh, director of the Center of Global Health Policy and Politics at Georgetown University. Georgetown University is all about the politicos, the bureaucrats of D.C. Quote, "They see the USAID agencies and infrastructures as weaker than the rest of the government, so they're trying to see what they can get away with," according to Kavanaugh. After Trump was elected in November, USAID employees knew changes were coming, but veterans of prior Republican administrations have found changes to their programs less drastic than feared. When Trump on January 24th not only paused new foreign aid funding, but also issued a stop work order preventing outside groups from using U.S. funding they'd already received, it became clear this time would be different. Groups that relied on USAID funding laid off hundreds of staffers. So these groups, these nonprofits, basically relied completely on funding from USAID, from the federal government, to do whatever it was that these nonprofits were doing. No thank you. And as a result, they're forced to lay people off. Work that was halted, according to employees and contractors, included the U.S.'s efforts to stop the spread of an Ebola outbreak in Uganda, an outbreak of the Marburg virus disease in Tanzania, and a multi-country outbreak of Mpox, which used to be monkeypox for those who want to know. Most employees of a field hospital in Gaza were abruptly terminated last week, said Adam Hamawi, a plastic surgeon working nearby. The hospital administrator sent a text message to the terminated staff saying they would be paid a final $400. Waivers have now been granted to allow certain emergency humanitarian programs to get funds, although employees and recipients said they'd received limited guidance about how to interpret which programs qualify. Quote, "This is not about getting rid of foreign aid," according to Rubio, who said this Monday on Fox News. Quote, "There are things we should do through USAID that we should continue to do that make sense." Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, one of the lawmakers protesting USAID's shutdown on Monday, said the stop work order halted the deliveries of firewood to Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines. On January 27th, some 60 senior career employees, including the ethics and employment lawyers, were put on administrative leave and escorted out of the Ronald Reagan building in downtown Washington, forced to hand over the security badges they needed to swipe out. Nicholas Gottlieb, the agency's director of employee and labor relations, later sent an email saying that after review, he found the decision to put dozens of senior employees on leave unjustified and that there had been no evidence of misconduct. 2 hours later, he emailed to say he himself had been put on leave, according to employees. On January 28th, hundreds of contractors were laid off. Last week, the order came down that all artwork throughout the organization would have to be removed. USAID officials expect that there will be a future notice putting more staff on administrative leave. Termination notices often arrived outside normal working hours. Some contractors started hearing that their colleagues had lost their jobs in the morning and watched the hours tick until their notices arrived at night. For some overseas, dismissal has meant trying to figure out how to get back to the U.S. with their families. On Saturday, Doge representatives sought access to sensitive systems at USAID's building in Washington. Security officials at the agency initially resisted the Doge team's request, which some people familiar with the confrontation said included demands for access to personal information. Quote, "We spent the weekend feeding USAID into the wood chipper," Musk said on social media. USAID is a criminal organization. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you. And if you want to support the channel and help me make even more videos, join the channel and become a paid member today.